The arrival of Sita. For many years, there had been a dearth of rain in the kingdom, and the Maharaja had been doing intense tapasya, spiritual disciplines, to understand the causes of this drought and to meditate the effects of the changing climate. It was said that forces coming from other parts of the earth were causing these disruptions. But Janak Baba had always taught that benefit can come from difficult times. And so the drought led to new ways of cultivating food. One day, when Janak Baba was meditating by the river, the Devi, goddess of the river, arose and spoke to him. Use my waters to nurture the crops, she said. At first, Janak Baba didn't understand, but then she guided him on how to dig ditches so her waters could flow into the fields. This helped for some time, but after more years with little rain, the flow of her waters also grew weak. When the people had to do without food, the Maharaja joined them and underwent extensive fasting during these years. Janak Baba did not despair. He saw this as an opportunity to build alliances with other kingdoms. We had been a self sufficient kingdom, supplying all the needs of our people, but now we could no longer feed our population. Our Maharaja had never needed to seek assistance, but gradually he began to say there would be benefit in trade, and so new relationships were formed. It was Maharaja Dasharatha of the nearby Kosala kingdom who approached Janak Baba, offering grains to alleviate the shortages. Theirs was a larger and much more powerful kingdom, and Janak Baba was at first hesitant to receive this gift without offering something in return. It was said that Maharaja Dasharatha recognized his hesitation to receive without giving, and wanting to respect this, Dasharatha asked for the works of Videha artisans in exchange. Janak Baba readily accepted, knowing that they were sowing seeds of a future alliance. There was a huge gratitude in the kingdom. Janak Baba told his ministers that someday we would repay Ayodhya in full for for this generosity. The assistance given by Ayodhya saw the people of Videha through difficult times, and gratitude was embedded in our hearts. Janak Baba and Sunaina Ma were advancing in years and had no heirs, but there was no concern in the kingdom about this, because we knew that our Maharaja would take care of all the necessary responsibilities. One day, rumors spread that the Maharaja was bringing together the sages of the kingdom for a very special puja, a devotional ritual to ask for a child, a daughter. Everyone wondered, why a daughter? Maharajas everywhere longed for a son to continue their reign. But we were different. We all knew that our Janak Baba was not like the other Maharajas. His vision extended far beyond our kingdom. Around that time, a certain sage from far away came to visit the palace, and he asked the Maharaja if it were true that he was offering pujas so that a daughter would be born to him and his wife. Janak Baba could see the look of shock on his face. So he smiled and asked, why does this surprise you? Maharaja, it is true that you have no son. Janak Baba nodded, his smile broadening. Are you not concerned about succession? He inquired. Someone to reign when you are gone? Kingdoms come and go. I am concerned with the welfare of the earth, he responded. I have observed increasing disturbances in the rhythms of nature and believe that only the Supreme Shakti, the Divine Feminine herself, can again bring balance and harmony to the natural world. Without regaining this balance, I fear there will be much more suffering. Her presence is needed now, and I will invoke her again and again in the hope that she will respond and pour her love over all the living creatures on this earth by appearing in physical form. And so the meditations and pujas continued. One day, some months later, The Maharaja set out early in the morning before the first hint of dawn. Sunainama was there to see him off. He told her that he intended to travel to the driest part of the kingdom, the region most in need of relief, where he would meditate. He waited for her to join him. When he saw that the Maharani was not stepping into the chariot beside him, he asked, Sunaina, will you not come to receive your daughter? She looked at him in amazement. There was nothing on earth that she wanted more than a child, but she honored and respected the austerities of her husband and so had resigned herself to being childless. He indicated that yes, for sure, their daughter would arrive, and so she stepped into the chariot beside him. When they came to the barren fields, fields that had not yielded crops for many years, they stepped down from the chariot, and the Maharaja went into deep meditation. The Maharani began to pray, reciting the mantras her husband had taught her to invoke the Supreme Devi. The hours passed, dawn flowed into midday as the sun made its way across the sky. The sun made its descent, and soon night set in, bringing a silence and stillness as they continued their meditations and invocations. It was just before dawn when Sunaina Ma's eyes fell open. She had heard the first cry of a child. She roused Janak Baba from his meditation, her eyes glowing with joy. I heard a cry, she exclaimed in excitement. A most melodious cry. It was more like a song calling out to a world. During his meditation, Janak Baba had seen the beautiful Mahadevi, the great goddess who acknowledged that she was responding to his call. When Janak Baba beheld the small desert creatures that had gathered around, he looked at them with gratitude in his heart. She is coming for you as well, he said, not only for us humans. He took the plow that he had crafted especially for this moment, and walking to the center of the field, he dug it into the earth. With that motion, he took a vow that his daughter would belong to the earth and all of her creatures. She would not belong to him, Sunaina, or any man. She belonged to all. He had not called her forth to extend his kingdom, to perpetrate his reign, or to gain greater power or wealth, but to help and heal the natural world that was growing increasingly imbalanced. After his plow hit the earth and a small depression was created in the dry soil, she manifested in that very spot. It would not be long before word spread that the daughter of Vasundhara Devi, Mother Earth herself, had been born. Within minutes, the rains began, at first in small droplets and then in a downpour to water the thirsty land. Janak Baba lifted up the infant, held her against his chest, and gave thanks. It was around this time that Janak Baba sent for me, just a few months after I nearly lost my life in the river. Janak Baba has come to see me about you, Aditi told me one evening. About me? I asked in a surprise. She nodded. He asked me to tell you that your tapasya is now over. My tapasya? I looked at her in confusion. I knew, in a general sense, what tapasya was, the long, difficult meditation practice that the sages engaged in to bring certain beneficial results for themselves and for the world. Our Maharaja engaged in tapasya for the sake of the kingdom, but I, a poor servant, had no notion of these matters. I had not engaged in any meditation practice. I knew nothing of this. She nodded again. You have undergone much hardship, Meenakshi, since your father's death, and even I can see how this has benefited you. He asked that you now be assigned to serve the Maharani. It will be for a brief period and then you will be given another assignment. I don't understand, I murmured. You know that I am perfectly content as I am. I haven't sought anything more. In truth, I was fearful of moving into a position with more direct access to the Maharaja and Maharani. I was far more comfortable serving out of sight than within the purview of the whole household. Do you not trust his wisdom, my dear? When I didn't answer, she continued, do you remember after your father had the accident, you asked me whether Janak Baba had come to bless him? I nodded. I was not in the room, but one of the servants was. He recently told me of those last moments. He relayed to me that as your father lay dying, the Maharaja expressed gratitude for his many years of service and said he would fulfill any last request. I want you to know his dying wish. Your father folded his hands and, with all of the life left in him, beseeched Janak Baba to look after you, to guard you from any misfortune, and, if he saw fit, to find appropriate service for you beyond what you were performing. The Maharaja nodded and made that commitment. She is a good servant and a good daughter, and perhaps I have been too harsh on her, your father said. She was the blessing that came to me in the midst of all my misfortunes, and I owe that to your care for my family for so many generations. Why did nobody tell me this sooner? I asked, my eyes tearing. If I had known, what would you have done differently? Aditi asked. I don't know, I murmured. Forget the past, Meenakshi. Think of your future. Janak Baba has called for you, and you cannot refuse him. So that is why he saved me from that river that day, I thought. I was deeply moved to think he would remember that commitment to my father of so many years ago. But that was the nature of our Baba. His word was ironclad. Never would he retreat from a commitment, and his patience was unlimited. His tapasya had taught him to know the right time for every action. Aditi continued. I never doubted that when Janak Baba felt the time was right, he would intervene. He would call you at the appropriate moment. Now is the time, Meenakshi. I am less active in the household, and someone like you is very much needed. Someone who carries the dedication that has been passed down through the generation from your great great grandfather and on to your father and now to you. You have this responsibility. I nodded my consent. Please convey to Janak Baba how grateful I am, not just for his consideration of me, but for fulfilling the last wishes of my father. That means a great deal to me, and I will do my utmost to follow in his footsteps. After Aditi left, I could not help but wonder if my recent change of heart had something to do with the turn of events. Did Janak Baba know the shift that had taken place in my attitude over the last few months? And was it Janak Baba's blessing that had changed me, that had turned my resistance and self pity into a sense of gratitude, that made me eager for the opportunity to perform the least desirable task, that enabled me to finally see the dignity of my father's life and the truth of what he had been trying to teach me throughout my childhood? Dignity was a quality much valued in our kingdom. Although our lives in the kingdom of Videha were simple, our needs and wants few, we saw this simplicity as a form of dignity because of respect we accorded all of the natural world and all of the people in our kingdom. Nobody took too much, lest others go without, and this we would not tolerate. Every child who lost a parent was cared for. Every aged person was honored. There was little breaking of the trust between people. Everyone was accorded the same respect and honor and care. Janak Baba understood that for a society to be in harmony, everyone had to be looked after without exception. I suspect that is why my family was taken in after misfortune befell us. Everyone in our society understood the rhythms of nature and lived in accordance with the natural cycles. To us, its laws were sacred and the key to our prosperity. And our prosperity lay not only in the abundant resources of nature, but also in the wisdom that flowed from our Maharaja, which guided every aspect of our lives. From him, we had learned that as long as we upheld the natural laws, our needs would be provided for one way or another. He taught that it was because of this that Maharaja Dasharatha had come to our aid when we most needed it. Difficult times were there to teach us certain lessons, he said, but we had to remain true to our principles and beliefs. There was no thought to take more from nature than was needed, for we were also conscious of the needs of the animal and plant kingdoms. In earlier days, most of our food had come from the abundant forests and valleys, which had been overflowing with so many varieties of fruits, nuts, roots, and wild grains. But as we grew in numbers and encroached upon the forests, these foods diminished, and so the Janak family led us in the cultivation of crops. But we had not forgotten how the forest once served all of the needs of our ancestors. And so a deep gratitude remained embedded in our minds and spirits. Gratitude, respect, and love for all life. This was the essence of dignity our Janak Baba taught us. Our gratitude was also for earth, for her soil, which provided more and more of our food. We honored her, respected her, and were grateful. And this feeling became even stronger when we learned that the earth goddess had given us a daughter. She had given the people of Videha one who could not only protect our kingdom, but also help restore balance to the whole of the natural world. The long withholding of rains had alerted us to the fact that even if we abided by the laws of the natural world and gave our gratitude, there were others on earth who might behave differently, and all would suffer from their ill acts. Thus, we became more and more aware that there were forces at play that we could not comprehend, but we trusted that our wise Maharaja knew how to counter these forces and was busy doing so. When we saw the rains return after his years of tapasya and pujas, after his extreme patience and persistence, we were more convinced than ever that the powers of our Maharaja extended far beyond the material realm. So when he brought home his daughter, we viewed her as he did, a gift from the gods, indeed, as the great Shakti herself. While the village people said she was born of the earth, there was whispering throughout the household that she was a self manifesting one, the great Devi of whom the sages spoke. She took physical form through her own will. Janak Baba did not dissuade this talk, but he allowed the villagers to proclaim that she was the daughter of Vasundhara Devi, the earth goddess, and so she was named Sita, which means furrow of the earth.